So first of all, thank you for the opportunity, and looking forward to answer some of your questions. I mean, the preferences clearly are regionally different, right, when it comes to family offices, and also they're changing over time. So I've been in the region for 20 years, and the discussion around investments 20 years ago were completely different than they are today. For example, 20 years ago, we were definitely more discussing about diversification outside of the region for different reasons. And nowadays, there is more discussion around investments within the region. So what we've seen from the report is that there is a higher attribution to investments towards emerging markets from this region, which is, the family offices in the region have maybe a higher affinity towards emerging markets, including India, where we have clearly a higher allocation, and also China. Family offices here are connected to operating businesses, so it's important for them to understand that there needs to be a diversification between the businesses that they have regionally and also the investment regionally, and also when it comes to the structuring of their wealth in general. So what we often see in this region, I think this is also something that came out of the report, is that inheritance planning or succession planning is somewhat something that is not on everybody's mind. Regional preferences, but there's also preferences in terms of asset classes. And I mean, you have been in this region, I have been in this region for a very long time. So real estate plays a very important role when it comes to investments, and that obviously drives the allocation to alternative investments for these clients and the family office that we see here, because real estate forms part of the alternative space. So we talked about preferences, right, before, and the preferences are not only regionally different, but they're also different when it comes to asset classes. And in the Middle East, what is interesting for the ones that have been going to the Middle East is that real estate is on everybody's mind. So the real estate exposure and the affinity to real estate is the second highest globally, according to the report, to real estate in the Middle East. So that obviously drives the high exposure to direct private equity investments. And at the same time, in the Middle East, what you're seeing is the lowest exposure to public equity. And the question here, why is this? And I think one of the reasons why this is that in the Middle East, you have a concept of long-term partnership, of strong involvement, right, into investments, but also the level of sophistication that we have seen going up in recent years when it comes to talents that are working at family offices here in this region. And that's why we believe that the exposure to direct investments in this particular region is very high. We need to challenge them, obviously, from a UBS perspective, and we need to make sure that their asset allocation globally and holistically is still the right one, because obviously these are relatively higher risk investments, especially when you're investing in this region into private equity. So we would recommend to maybe go into infrastructure investments, for example, or then reallocate some of their larger real estate investments that they have here in the region into alternative investments such as hedge funds and private equity. Yeah, for example, when a business or a family is heavily involved in the business here, let's say in real estate, right? And then they have additionally also a lot of real estate investments here in this region, then of course we will make them aware that their allocation of their overall wealth is very much tuned towards this region, number one, and also specifically towards this asset class. So we would then challenge them and say that I think it makes sense for you to have a more diversified investment and maybe go into more liquid assets, for example, in public equities. Or if you want to regionally diversify, we would then recommend them to go into different regions for investment purposes. So we're just trying to look at it from a holistic perspective, not that these clients are too much exposed to one region or to one business in particular. I mean, it's hard to say what exact amount family offices really allocate to AI. But what we're seeing in this region is that AI, healthcare, data centers are clearly a focal point, right, of a lot of family offices here. And by the way, they are also our long-term investment themes, from a UBS perspective. And that, somehow it's not surprising, because the governments here in this region, they are really having a strategic vision, right, to foster these kind of industries quite significantly. I mean, when you look at, for example, Abu Dhabi, we have G42 with Stargate, which is a huge AI project, but also in Saudi we have UMain, which is fostered by PIF, which is also a very large project in this particular area. And then in the healthcare space, we also have in Saudi the healthcare transformation program that is undergoing. And these governments, they want to open this up for public investments as well. So naturally, family offices are exposed to investment opportunities in this specific regard, right? And I think that is definitely something that is interesting. It also is a testament of the foresight of some of these governments here in the region. Some of our clients, we bank every second billionaire in the world, and what our clients would like to see is connectivity with these kind of investors, but also clients who have exposure to AI, who have exposure to these healthcare industries where they potentially can do connectivity, and we can help them with them. I mean, for example, in Saudi, we had an event lately where we invited some European investors. They came to Saudi. We gave them exposure to some of our Saudi investors, and the same just happened last week. I just came back from Hong Kong last week, where we had a delegation of Middle East investors, and we took them to Hong Kong at our Asian Investors Conference, where we gave them exposure to some of our clients over there. So that connectivity is a big advantage for UBS and for our clients. Main advice would be for the family offices to early engage with the next generation.
Yes.
To make sure that the next generation is into the structure of the family. Know that there is quite an interest from family members to become part of the family office setup versus their operating businesses. And I think here we advise to start early on, also to make sure that the succession planning and the structuring of the wealth is properly organized, so that we have a very stable and solid footing for the next generation to take over.